The Four of Cups in Joe Bandel's Oak Tarot of Love and Romance marks a pivotal threshold in relationships, shifting from the passive waiting of traditional tarot into a space of active, albeit reluctant, emotional negotiation. While many people recognize the standard Rider-Waite image of a bored figure under a tree ignoring a fourth cup, Bandel reimagines this scene as a highly charged encounter between a man and a woman sitting across from each other. They're at a table where four glowing cups are placed, and the air between them isn't filled with apathy, but with the heavy electric tension of two people deciding whether to actually fight for what they have or let it go.
It's such a departure because it forces the question of what we do when the initial magic of a relationship hits the wall of reality. In this deck, the cups aren't just symbols of emotion, they're managed resources. When you look at the visual description, you see the man leaning forward with an almost desperate eagerness. He's taking a massive risk by exposing his hurt, hoping that honesty will be the bridge that brings her back. Meanwhile, the woman is in a state of reluctant compromise. She isn't just saying yes, she's weighing the cost. Her expression is a mix of compassion and hesitation, which I think is a much more honest depiction of how we actually navigate long-term commitment than the usual happily ever after narrative.
That term reluctant compromise feels counterintuitive. Usually we're told compromise should be easy if you love someone, but Bandel suggests there's a vital role for hesitation. Why is that reluctance so important here?
Because it indicates that the stakes are high. If you compromise too quickly without feeling that reluctance, you might just be people-pleasing or avoiding the actual conflict. The hesitation in the Four of Cups shows that the woman is honoring her own boundaries. She's listening to his vulnerability, but she's also protecting her heart. In Bandel's philosophy, which he calls organic Gnosticism, the relationship is a laboratory for truth. You can't have truth if you're just glossing over the parts that hurt. The reluctance is the sign that she's actually considering the terms of this new emotional negotiation, rather than just falling back into an old, potentially toxic pattern.
And the man's role here is equally complex. He's described as taking the risk of seductive pain. It's not manipulation in the typical sense, but it is a strategic use of his own vulnerability. He's laying his wounds bare to see if they can create a connection. It reminds me of research into extrinsic emotion regulation in relationships, where one partner's radical honesty forces the other to step into a space of care. But there's a danger there, isn't there? If you use your pain as a way to win someone back, where does the line between authentic honesty and emotional leverage sit?
That's exactly where the tension lies. The card represents a crossroads. For the man, the courage is in being real about his hurt without knowing if it will work. He's moving away from the perfect ideal of a man who is always strong and never wounded. For the woman, the challenge is to meet that vulnerability with compassion without losing herself. It's a delicate dance. If she moves closer, it's not because the problem is solved, it's because she's decided to work with what is real, the messy, painful reality, instead of holding out for a fantasy version of the relationship where no one ever gets hurt.
The backdrop of all this is that massive oak tree. In this deck, the oak is the anchor for the entire series. It's not just a nice piece of scenery. Bandel uses it to symbolize the grounded reality that love requires. If the glowing cups represent the shifting, volatile nature of emotions, the tree is the stability that holds them together. It suggests that even though this conversation is hard and the compromise is reluctant, the foundation they're standing on is ancient and strong. It's the capacity to weather emotional storms.
I love the contrast between the soft teals and golds of the glowing cups and the warm earth tones of the tree. It visually tells the story of how love grows. It's slow, it's deep. According to the oak matrix, which is the system Bandel built for this deck, the oak tree is the loving embrace of opposites. It stands firm while the leaves and the light shift around it. In the context of the Four of Cups, the tree says, this negotiation is happening within a safe container. You can afford to be honest because the commitment itself, the oak, is strong enough to hold your pain.
It's interesting how this card reframes the idea of ideals. In the traditional Four of Cups, the person is often seen as being ungrateful for what's offered because they're looking for something better. Here, it's more about the transition from waiting for the ideal to embracing the authentic. We often get stuck in relationships because we're comparing our partner to some non-existent version of them that doesn't have flaws. This card represents the moment you stop waiting for that imaginary cup to fall from the sky and you look at the cups already on the table.
And those cups on the table are glowing, which suggests they have their own light, even if they aren't the perfect ones you imagined. It's a very grounded way to look at romance. It moves away from the Sex and the City style of the Three of Cups, which is all about external celebration and social circles, and brings it back to the internal mechanics of two people. If you look at the psychological literature on relationship satisfaction, strategies like active listening and expressing value toward a partner, which is what the man is doing by being honest, are the strongest predictors of long-term success. But those strategies only work if the other person responds with the kind of protective wisdom the woman shows here.
Let's dig into that female experience Bandel describes. He says she's at a crossroads, retreat further or meet his vulnerability with her own opening. That sounds like a heavy burden. Why is it framed as compassion and distance?
Because distance is a form of integrity. If you've been hurt, or if the relationship has been through a mental collision, which is how Bandel describes the conflict leading up to this, you can't just jump back into total intimacy without a period of assessment. The distance is her checking her own compass. She's saying, I hear you and I feel for you, but I need to know if this change is real. It's the opposite of being reactive. Instead of a knee-jerk emotional response, she's engaging in a thoughtful negotiation. She is becoming her own authority before she decides to merge her life back with his.
That's a powerful shift from the withdrawn figure we see in traditional decks. Instead of being bored, she's being discerning. And for the man, the experience is about the courage and honesty. He's exposing his wounds in the hope of reconnection. It reminds me of the idea of relational energy. Interactions can be either expansive or contractive. By sharing his pain, he's trying to expand the relationship again after a period where it probably felt very small and closed off.
And the fact that there are 4 cups is significant. In numerology, 4 is the number of stability, structure, and foundations. It's like the 4 walls of a house. After the celebration of the 3, the 4 is where you build the actual structure that can hold a life together. But you can't build that house out of fantasies. You have to build it out of the bricks of reality. The reluctant compromise is the sound of those bricks being laid. It's not always a pretty sound, but it's the sound of something that will actually stand.
I think many listeners might find it helpful to look at this card when they feel stuck in a stalemate in their relationship. Usually we think of a stalemate as a bad thing, but this card suggests it's a necessary pause. It's the quiet scene before the next stage of growth. If you're looking at this card in a reading, it might be asking, are you being honest about your hurt? Or are you willing to listen to your partner's pain without immediately trying to?
Or even more pointedly, are you holding out for a version of this person that doesn't exist? The 4 of Cups is a call to stop waiting for the perfect ideal and start negotiating with the authentic reality sitting right in front of you. It's about the threshold between guarding your heart and risking vulnerability. You can't have the strength of the oak tree without being willing to sink your roots into the real, sometimes muddy, earth of your partner's true self.
It's a very grown-up view of love. It moves past the initial infatuation and into the work of partnership. Bandel often notes that the womb is always open, meaning the potential for renewal is always there, but it requires this moment of labor. You have to go through the difficulty of the negotiation to get to the next level of intimacy.
Exactly, and that's why the colors are so important, the teals and soft golds. There's beauty in this struggle. It's not a dark or depressing card, it's a hopeful one. It just happens to be a hope that is grounded in the truth rather than in a dream. When the man shares his pain and the woman meets it with her compassionate hesitation, they are creating a shared reality. That shared reality is the third thing, the third space between them that allows the relationship itself to become as strong as that oak tree.
The tree also represents endurance. It's a reminder that relationships aren't built in a day, they're grown over seasons. The 4 of Cups is a snapshot of one of those seasons, the season where you have to decide if you're going to keep growing together or if the roots have hit a rock they can't get past. The presence of the oak suggests that the rock isn't the end, it's just something the roots have to grow around.
It really highlights that honesty isn't just about not lying. It's an act of courage. It's the willingness to be seen when you're not at your best, when you're hurt, when you're scared, when you're being reluctant. If you can navigate that threshold, you move from the imaginary cups of the early stages of romance into the glowing cups of a mature, authentic connection.
It's a call to look at the emotional negotiation in your own life. Are you being too eager, like the man, and perhaps ignoring your own boundaries? Or are you being too hesitant, like the woman, and perhaps missing a genuine opportunity for reconnection? The card asks us to find the balance between protective wisdom and open-hearted compassion.
And to remember that the goal isn't to get to a place where there is no conflict, but to a place where the conflict is grounded in truth. The reluctant compromise is how we find our way back to each other when the path gets blocked. It's the moment the soul says yes to the reality of the other person, flaws and all.
Ultimately, the Four of Cups from the Oak Tarot reminds us that the most romantic thing we can do isn't always a grand gesture or a poetic declaration. Sometimes it's just sitting at the table, looking each other in the eye, and deciding that what we have, as imperfect and difficult as it might be, is worth the negotiation. It's the choice to stay by the tree and keep doing the work of being real. If this deeper look into the Four of Cups gave you a new perspective on the messy reality of love, share this episode with someone who is currently navigating their own emotional negotiations.